So in this video, we are going to be looking at the non-cooperation movement. We are going to look at the causes that led to the launch of the movement. By the end of 1919, the British had continued to impose graver justices on the Indian population and politics. This led to the beginning of a mega mass movement, the non-cooperation movement. Some of the important events that led to the rise of the non-cooperation movement can be looked at as follows. The first one, the Indian National Congress had largely supported the World War I efforts of the British. The World War I was from 1914 to 1918. The British had promised greater constitutional reforms and a greater delegation of power to the indigenous people. In the name of constitutional reforms, the British came up with the Montague-Chelmsford reforms. Remember that the Jallianwala Bagh massacre also happened around this time only, right? So, in the name of constitutional reforms after World War I, the British came up with the Montague-Chelmsford reforms. This introduced diarchy, which was again meant to cause division rather than a transfer of power as was promised during the wartime. Diarchy means there are two centers of power. So, diarchy meant that there was further division that was going to be caused in the nation rather than a transfer of power as was promised during the wartime. This was in line with the British policy of breaching any trust that was placed in them. The introduction of the draconian Rowlatt Acts led to a lot of strife in the Indian political circles. The Rowlatt Satyagraha was organized as a form of protest against the Rowlatt Acts. We have already seen this in the previous videos. The Rowlatt Acts or the Rowlatt Satyagraha, in fact, was a peaceful, non-violent satyagraha. The British establishment responded with the Jallianwala Bagh massacre, killing hundreds, if not 1,000 people. Martial law was imposed after the massacre, making conditions even worse. The various indignities that the Indians had to suffer due to the oppressive and beastly policies of the British had caused great resentment. The third point, the House of Lords in Britain approved the actions of Dyer. Remember, Dyer had killed more than 1,000 people in the Jallianwala Bagh massacre. In fact, the British population in general approved Dyer's actions. The newspaper Morning Post helped collect over 30,000 pounds from the British population as a reward for Dyer's actions in Punjab, which included the Jallianwala Bagh massacre. The Hunter Committee was appointed to look into the actions of Dyer. The Hunter Committee did not punish Dyer. The whole committee was a hogwash. The fourth point, the Indian Muslims had been supporting the British war efforts because the British had promised decent and generous treatment of the Khalifa of the Ottoman Empire. The Khalifa was the spiritual head of Islam. Post the war, the Caliph of Turkey had no real control. In fact, the Ottoman Empire entirely collapsed by 1922, within just 4 years of the end of World War I. The Muslim spiritual head had lost control of the holy sites as well. This had caused a great level of resentment in the Muslims. The Treaty of Service was signed with Turkey by the British in May 1920. This sealed the dismemberment and the fate of the Turkish Empire. In June, the Khilafat leaders, who were representatives of the Indian Muslims, agreed to Gandhi's idea of non-cooperation movement. You can clearly see that the Muslims actually gravitated towards Gandhi because the British did not treat the Ottoman Empire well. The British did not treat the Khalifa of the Ottoman Empire well. In fact, the Ottoman Empire was beginning to collapse. This led to a realization that the Muslims were not going to be looked after well by the British, and hence they began to gravitate towards Gandhi. The Khilafat leaders now agreed to Gandhi's idea of non-cooperation movement. Gandhi had been asking the Khilafat leaders to join the non-cooperation movement since February. However, the Khilafat leaders joined the non-cooperation movement only after being totally shunned by the British and after the Treaty of Service was signed, rendering the Caliph as an important person. The anger in the Indian population due to the Jallianwala Bagh massacre and the feeling of being defrauded by the British in the Indian political circles led to the launch of the non-cooperation movement on August 1st of 1920. It was also on the same day that the people's favorite leader Lokamanya Tilak would pass away. A new phase of the Indian national movement under Gandhi would begin. We will continue looking at the non-cooperation movement in 3 more videos. Thank you.